Beautiful. Thank you, Jane Manning, Jackie Rosen, and thank you, Louis Armstrong. It is indeed a wonderful world, and we are grateful to the Satchmo and our marvelous music director, Julie Crooks, for helping us to remember that always. Good morning. Welcome to ROOF, the Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ashland, Oregon. I am Daniel Guy, here to welcome you on this beautiful Sunday morning, the last day in June. Here we gather in person and online to nurture the courage and compassion necessary to sustain a resilient and vibrant community working in cooperation with like-minded souls towards a better world. As the last few days have shown us, building the work we seek will require all these qualities and more. We want to thank the Stream team for making it possible for people to experience our worship online, and today the North Talent Neighborhood team welcoming the on-site congregation. Please join us after the service for conversation, coffee, and maybe even a tasty snack provided by generous members of the neighborhood team. Today, while our regular minister, Sean Parker Dennison, has a well-deserved Sunday off, I am privileged to introduce someone who has long been a mentor to many of us in working for peace and justice. During a career teaching English literature at Louisiana State University, our guest speaker, Herbert Rothschild Jr., founded the Baton Rouge chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union in 1966, while serving as state legislative director from 1973 through 1977. Increasingly concerned about the USSR arms race, Rothschild started the nuclear disarmament movement in Louisiana, founding the Center for Disarmament Education. He went on to fund the SANE nuclear freeze movement in New Jersey. After moving to Southern Oregon, he chaired the board of Peace House from 2011 to 2015. Retired, he now spends his time gardening and playing the flute, while continuing to write a weekly column for Ashland.News. If you have not yet read it, I urge you to read this column. I believe you'll find it more than worthwhile. While having the pleasure of reading The Bad Old Days, a decade of struggle for justice in Louisiana, I have been deeply struck by Herb Rothschild's frank admission of bearing a tint or stain that can never be washed clean. Quote, "We are dyed in the wool. The tint can fade to a faintness undetectable by others, but I fear we are never washed clean." I am wondering, is this phenomenon confined to the South? I don't think so. I think we all share in it.
May this hour bring rest and renewal, comfort and challenge. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but that we are connected in mystery and in wonder to each other, to this community, and to the universe.
Good morning. Please join me in our opening hymn this morning in your gray hymnal, number 66, When the Summer Sun is Shining. Jane, we're on 66, but I love that tune. Number 66. The one she played was my favorite. It is. When the summer sun is shining over golden land and sea, and the flowers in the hedgerow welcome the butterfly and bee, then when your heart is glowing, full of one for everyone, and I feel an inner beauty which reflects the summer sun. When the summer clouds of thunder bring the long-awaited rain, and the thirsty soil is moistened, and the grass is green again, then I long for summer sunshine, but I know that clouds and tears are a part of life's refreshment, like the rainbow's hopes and fears. In the cool of summer evening, when the dancing insects play, and in garden, street, and meadow linger echoes of the day, then my heart is full of yearning, hopes and longing for the home of my being, reaching inwards to the corners of my soul.
Good morning. I'm Rosalie Wolf, and with me is Kate Cleland Sipfel. We are representing the anti-racism group this morning. As members of the anti-racism study group, we light a candle weekly at ROOF to acknowledge the conscious and unconscious bias that is embedded deep within our culture and continues to threaten racial injustice for all people. This week brings 2 anniversaries of note to people interested in the history of American race relations. One, an atrocity that may not have been in your school history book, and one, an example of landmark anti-racist policy. Did you know that East St. Louis, Illinois, race riot of July 1 and 2, 1917, brought death and destruction to unknown numbers of Black Americans living in an industrial neighborhood? Conspiracy theories and false rumors about threats to white men's jobs fed into events leading up to days of white-led domestic terrorism. There are some websites and books about it if you'd like to know more. On a different note, July 2nd is the 60th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. The act authorized federal protection against discrimination by race in employment, voting, and the use of public facilities. It proved controversial, with protests and backlash to follow. The legislation was a major victory for the civil rights movement and an example of anti-racist policy at the highest level of government. Thank you.
One
Let's sing it anyway.
child. Let's sing it anyway.
This is a poem to accompany the lighting of the peace candle. It's by Wendell Berry, called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
By Howard Zinn, March 7th, 1999. You ask how I managed to stay involved and remain seemingly happy and adjusted to this awful world where the efforts of caring people pale in comparison to those who have power. It's easy. First, don't let those who have power intimidate you. No matter how much power they have, They cannot prevent you from living your life, speaking your mind, thinking independently, having relationships with people as you like. Read Emma Goldman's autobiography, Living My Life. Harassed, even imprisoned by authority, she insisted on living her life, speaking out however she felt like. Second, find people to be with who have your values, your commitments, but who also have a sense of humor. That combination is a necessity. Third, notice how precise is my advice that I can confidently number it, the way scientists number things. I understand that the major media will not tell you all of the acts of resistance taking place every day in our society. The strikes, the protests, the individual acts of courage in the face of authority. Look around, and you will certainly find it, for the evidence of these unreported acts. And for the little you find, extrapolate from that and assume there must be 1,000 times as much as what you found. Fourth, note that throughout history, people have felt powerless before authority, but that at certain times, these powerless people, by organizing, asking, acting, risking, persisting, have created enough power to change the world around them, even if a little. This is the history of the labor movement, of the women's movement, of the anti-Vietnam War movement, the disabled persons movement, the gay and lesbian movement, and the movement of Black people in the South. Fifth, remember that those who have power and who seem invulnerable are in fact quite vulnerable, that their power depends on the obedience of others. And when those others begin withholding that obedience, begin defying authority, that power at the top turns out to be very fragile. Generals become powerless when their soldiers refuse to fight. Industrialists become powerless when the workers leave their jobs or occupy the factories. 6, when we forget the fragility of that power in top, we become astounded when it crumbles in the face of rebellion. We have had many such surprises in our time, both in the United States and in other countries. 7, don't look for a moment of total triumph. See it as an ongoing struggle with victories and defeats, but in the long run, the consciousness of people growing. So you need patience, persistence, and need to understand that even when you don't win, there is fun and fulfillment in the fact that you have been involved with other good people in something worthwhile. Okay, 7 pieces of profound advice should be enough.
We're going to do a round today, so I'm going to divide you guys into side 1 and side 2. Take out your teal hymnal, please, and turn to number 1023. We're going to sing it all once together, and then this side is going to start, and then I'll cue this side. When they finish the first line, you guys start. So here we go, all the way through. Ready? And building bridges between the divisions, I reach out to you, you will reach out to me, with all of our voices and all of our visions. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony, building bridges between our divisions, building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me, with
Good morning. My hearing ain't great, so I'm not always sure how loudly I'm speaking. So, are you okay? Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's great to see many old friends here. I haven't seen some folks here in an awful long time. It's a pleasure. I'm going to do two things this morning. One, I'm going to give the publicized homily. But before that, I'm going to try to enlist your concern and your assistance in educating about the dangers of Christian nationalism, which my congregation, South Mountain Friends Meeting, the Quaker meeting here in town, has been working on for well over a year. And among other things, has arranged showings of a film called God and Country, which is quite powerful, a documentary, which you can see in your own home, and you can invite friends, and you can arrange a showing here at Roof. Christian nationalism seeks to merge Christian and American identities. It asserts that the United States was founded as a specifically Christian nation, that it is necessary to be a Christian to be a true American, and that Christianity should be favored and actively supported by the state. Some Christian nationalists have advocated for an amendment to the Constitution to recognize America as a Christian nation. Others to reinstate prayer in public schools. Some work to enshrine a Christian nationalist interpretation of American history in school curricula, including that America has a special relationship with God. Others advocate for immigration restrictions specifically to prevent a change to American religious and economic demographics. Some want to empower the government to take stronger action to circumscribe what they consider immoral behavior. A frequent corollary of this ideology is that the United States has been chosen to impose its will on other nations in the name of God. Additionally, Christian nationalism overlaps with white supremacy and racial subjugation at home as well as abroad. The Quaker meeting rejects all these tenets and implications of Christian nationalism. It distorts both the spirit of our country and Christianity itself. To be an American does not require adherence to any one religion or to any religion at all. And to adhere to Christianity, any other world religion, does not require residence in any one country. People are bound to their countries by their citizenship and by their religion, by their faith. Given that this is a movement as well as an ideology, a political movement, particularly among fundamentalist Christians who provide the most important part of the MAGA base, and given that Trump is likely to be our next president, and given that the U.S. Supreme Court is less and less willing to uphold separation of church and state, this is an imminent threat. Already, the state of Louisiana, the legislature has mandated the display of the Ten Commandments in every public schoolroom. And the head of the Department of Education in Oklahoma has mandated Bible study in all public school classrooms. And they're counting on those, the legal challenges to those things no longer to be upheld by a Supreme Court. There are a lot of things we can do. The first is to educate ourselves, and all you have to do is Google Christian nationalism, and you'll find a lot of material. The Baptist Joint Committee on Religious Freedom has established more than 6 years ago a project called Christians Against Christian Nationalism. You might think of Baptists as fundamentalists, but there are many versions of Baptists. And some of them have remained true to the historic Baptist commitment to separation of church and state. So I hope that you will become concerned. It's a threat to all of us. But I think it's particularly incumbent upon people who are churched to say that this is not what we believe, and to do our best to share that understanding with others. So now the homily, which is not too much longer, so I won't tax your patience. It's called The Older We Get, the More Like Ourselves We Become. My mother used to say that. What she meant, I think, was that the older we get, the more predictable our responses to things that come up in our lives. But I think it merits deeper thought. From an early age, we become creatures of habit. If we didn't, life would overwhelm us with trivial choices. Nobody wants to have to decide every day which sock to put on first, or whether we put the milk in our cup before we pour the coffee in or after, or what door we leave the house by. It doesn't matter what we do, even if we do these things quite eccentrically, because it leaves our minds freer to deal with the challenges of living. Then there are weightier habits, ones more determinative of the way that we handle those challenges of living. Of these, perhaps it's the bad habits that come to mind first when we hear the word habit, because they intrude on our consciousness and they frustrate our intentions for ourselves in a way that good habits don't. But I want to reflect on good habits. Aquinas held that habit is a virtue. We don't want to have to consciously choose the good time after time. We don't want to have to rise to virtue. We want our virtuous acts simply to be a piece with the way we live. As Michel Montaigne wrote, the virtue of the soul does not consist in flying high, but in walking orderly. And largely, that is the way we live. And to convince you that, I want you to put yourself in this little scenario. You're in downtown Houston. Sorry, I used to live in Houston before we came. You're downtown Ashland, and you find that you have a used candy wrapper or a used tissue in your hand. You're on the sidewalk. I'm fairly sure that none of you would spend your time thinking, should I throw this on the ground, or should I wait to get to a bin before I dispose of it properly? That wouldn't present itself to you as a choice. Your teenage self might have said, I'll do it if I want to do it. But you wouldn't say that now because you don't want to do it. Another way of saying this is that you've become a person who doesn't litter. And it's of no consequence how you came to be that person, with the exception that if you're responsible for training other people to become persons who don't want to litter, you do have to think about how to go about that training. It is important to know how and why we've formed the habits that detract from our relationship with others or from our own well-being, such as always reacting angrily when certain things are said to us. No later than our 50s, though, we should know what these habits are and have done enough inner work to make our peace with them one way or another. To return to Montaigne, in his essay of Repentance, he writes, "I very rarely repent, and my conscience is satisfied with itself, not as the conscience of an angel or that of a horse, but as the conscience of a man." Now, I don't find that expression of self-satisfaction smug when Frank Sinatra sang, "I did it my way." I found that smug, particularly because he wasn't a particularly good man. But Montaigne's expression doesn't sound smug because if you read his essays, you know that through experience and self-reflection, he became a person who by his own inclination, not by external compulsion and circumstance, rejected vice and practiced virtue. He wrote, "I have my laws and my judicature to judge of myself, and I apply myself more to these than to any other rules. There is no vice that is absolutely a vice which does not offend, and that a sound judgment does not accuse. There is likewise no virtue which does not rejoice a well-descended nature. There is a kind of congratulation in well-doing that gives us an inward satisfaction." Montaigne lived in a time and a place at least as turbulent as the one we live in. The struggle between Catholics and Protestants at that time in the 16th century in France was fierce and often violent. Part of that time, Montaigne was prominent in public affairs. So he was beset by conflicting forces, both intellectual and on occasion physical. He attributed his success in navigating these troubled waters to his integrity. Outwardly, that integrity manifested itself as a trustworthiness that everybody recognized. Inwardly, it manifested itself as a wholeness of being, which he had achieved by acknowledging and holding into constructive tension disparate ideas and personal tendencies. The psychologist Erik Erikson, I consider one of the wisest people I've ever read. He gave the name ego integrity to the 8th and final stage of his scheme of personal human development. He described ego integrity as a sense of coherence in one's life and acceptance of it as something that had to be. One sign to ourselves that we've successfully entered that final stage of life, ego integrity, is that our understanding of personal freedom has changed radically from when we were teenagers. Back then, we thought of experiencing freedom as the ability to choose for ourselves among multiple options. But now, in matters that count most, we experience freedom as having no other option except to do what we know is right. What we can do, and what we should do, and what we want to do become one and the same. I'm going to repeat that. What we can do, and what we should do, and what we want to do all become the same thing. That's not most people's understanding of freedom. But when we've come to believe in ourselves, it makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Herb. We take a lot of offerings at Roof, a lot. We have our first Sunday food bank offering, our third Sunday offerings for social justice and action, our regular offerings that support the congregation and our mission. On fifth Sundays, we take an offering for the minister's discretionary fund, which allows us to give money to people who are in crisis situations. This fund has paid rent deposits, utility bills, car repairs, education expenses, and medical expenses for those who would not be able to have what they need any other way. We work with local organizations which make sure the need is real and then let us know what is needed. So I come to you this fifth Sunday to let you know that the need is great. Giving today is the most direct way this congregation has of making a real difference in the lives of those who are struggling to survive in the Rogue Valley. Your generosity can literally save lives, keep families safe, and keep people going. This is one of the ways we engage in the work of making the world a better place. Please give as generously as you are able. This is love in action. thank you for all the gifts you bring to this fellowship. Your gifts of time, your presence here, and your treasure.
Please join me today in our closing hymn, number 159 in your gray hymnal. This is my song.
Our work here this morning is at an end, and our work has just begun. The work of holding one another in this community in love. The work of trusting that we are on the right path. The work of believing that connects us is stronger than what separates us. The work of engaging in that which makes us whole. The work of deeper understanding and commitment. The work of letting go that which does not serve us. The work of radical inclusion. The work of collective. The work of this beloved community. A beloved community of which we are all part. A place where we are welcomed, respected, valued, cherished. A place where we belong. Go in peace. Amen. And blessed be.